Good afternoon, everyone. On behalf of our Results for America team, it is my privilege to welcome all of you to the release event for our 2023 Invest in What Works State Standard of Excellence, and to our conversation with state government leaders from red states and blue states about how they are building and using evidence and data to deliver better results for their residents. We encourage everyone to participate in this conversation through our hashtag RFA State Standard, and by following us on Twitter/X at Results for America. At a time of polarization and gridlock at the federal level, governors, state legislators, and state agency leaders from across the country and across the political spectrum are leading the way when it comes to investing in what works. Our state standard of excellence, a North Star for how state governments can consistently and effectively build and use evidence and data in budget policy and management decisions, is what brings us here today. This year, Results for America identified 194 data-driven and evidence-based efforts in 46 states across the country. And we are very excited to be recognizing today 5 leading states: Colorado, Minnesota, North Carolina, Oregon, and Tennessee, for their exemplary use of evidence and data in their decision-making. We are also very happy to be recognizing 5 honorable mention states this year: California, Connecticut, New Mexico, Pennsylvania, and Utah, all of which have also demonstrated a strong commitment to building and use data in their work. More than ever before, our state standard this year highlights the growing number of state government efforts to use 3 key levers of power: grant making, budgeting, and direct services, to invest in evidence-based solutions. Now, what does this all mean for people who live in these states? Well, this means teachers trained in evidence-based reading instructional practices in Colorado. It means higher math scores for children in Tennessee who attended evidence-based summer learning programs. It means higher wages for childcare providers in Minnesota through a program that's being evaluated by the state. And it means expanded evidence-based opportunities for Utahns through increased access to high-quality jobs and careers. You can learn more about these and other state efforts by visiting our 2023 State Standard of Excellence website, and you can find the link to that standard in the chat today. Today, we'll be hearing directly from multiple governors and from senior state government officials in Ohio and Minnesota about how they are advancing economic mobility by investing in what works. Congratulations to the leading and honorable states for everything you've done to be recognized this year. And a big thank you to our state advisory committee members for helping us through this process all year long. And last but certainly not least, I want to thank the National Governors Association for their continued great partnership in this work since 2018. I would now like to turn the floor over to Ryan Martin, Deputy Director of the NGA Center for Best Practices, a longtime friend and a longtime champion of evidence-based policymaking, who will give a few opening remarks. Ryan, the floor is yours.
Thanks, David. It's great to be with you and the team and all the states as well again. Very excited about this, the continual release of this information that highlights the great work that states are doing. Really glad that everyone can join the 2013 Invest in What Works State Standard of Excellence launch, and I'm sure you'll all find it as a great resource that's incredibly useful. For governors, staff, and other leaders partnering who are joining today on behalf of NGA, I just want to take a moment to thank you for joining the conversation about how data and evidence are powerful tools that can help support your decision-making. I hope this conversation will spark or reinforce your desire to do what works. And we know, as David mentioned, polarization is eroding public confidence in the ability of government to achieve its goals. As a side note, our governor chairs currently, Governor Cox of Utah and Governor Polis of Colorado, have an initiative called Disagree Better, focused on that. So do please take a look at that as well. Definitely excited that the 2023 Invest in What Works State Standard of Excellence shows how states are transforming how they invest taxpayer dollars to deliver better results for their residents. And the standard is a key tool to help governors address challenges by highlighting the best practices across states, and it allows others to access information on these data-driven and evidence-based models so they can spread more widely. That's why we're so pleased to partner with Results for America for today's event to release this standard of excellence and more broadly support governors and our teams as they do this work. NGA is focused on getting the best information we can to those elected to make the decisions. And the resource released today is a really great example of that. The NGA Center for Best Practices has 14 small policy teams that focus on a variety of areas. And it's always great to have a resource like this that we can point people to so they can look and see what other states are doing and how they've been able to create effective programs and also evaluate the success of what they're doing. So thank you to all for being here today and showing your commitment to investing in evidence-based and data-driven policy. Today we'll be hearing from governors and leaders from red and blue states who are at the forefront of the evidence-based policymaking and data-driven innovation. And finally, just want to thank the governors and staff that continue to work tirelessly to deliver these results in states across the country. We're very glad that you're here with us today. And it's my pleasure now to introduce some recorded remarks by a number of governors who are taking great steps in this area. Governor Roy Cooper of North Carolina, Spencer Cox of Utah, Jared Polis of Colorado, Mike DeWine of Ohio, and Tim Waltz of Minnesota. So we'll turn to those videos now.
Hi everybody, North Carolina Governor Roy Cooper here. I'm grateful that we've earned this honor for the second year in a row. In North Carolina, our data-driven investments and policies have supported communities across our state and boosted our economy. In every corner of North Carolina, we're making meaningful investments to help families live, learn, and work. Thanks to our Office of State Budget and Management and our Office of Strategic Partnerships for helping make this happen. We're going to continue to use evidence-based policy to improve decision-making and maximize the investment of taxpayers. And that includes partnering with our world-class universities and research institutions. With these partnerships, we'll keep making investments to strengthen our state for everybody. On behalf of all of our staff who've been working on this, thanks so much for this honor.
Hi, I'm Governor Cox from the state of Utah. We are honored to be recognized as a leading state in results for America's state standard of excellence. In our state, we're cultivating a culture of innovation and evidence-based decision-making, empowering us to maximize the impact of taxpayer dollars. This synergy enables us to address the state's most pressing challenges head-on, creating bold solutions that improve the lives of all Utahns. Thanks for recognizing our state's effort to invest in what works and improve residents' lives.
Hi, I'm Governor Polis from the great state of Colorado. We are so honored to be recognized as a leading state in results for America's state standard of excellence. My administration is making data evidence and performance management key elements of how we do our job for our fellow Coloradans. It's making Colorado safer, healthier, lowering costs, helping businesses grow, all while being the best stewards of taxpayer dollars. We collaborate with legislators to use evidence as a common lens to evaluate decisions, and we're building greater capacity in state government to build and rely on data and evidence. For example, our state agencies are working with academic experts to build evidence-based strategies for our investments in early childhood development, healthcare, workforce, and other areas that are critically important to my fellow Coloradans. Thank you for recognizing our state's effort to invest in what works and improves Colorado lives and make government more efficient.
Hello, I'm Ohio Governor Mike DeWine. We work every single day to help support Ohioans and to encourage them to live up to their God-given potential so they can live their version of the American dream. In order to do that, we track and measure impact and outcomes. So it's a real honor to be recognized by Results for America as an example of excellence for our results-focused budgeting work here in the state of Ohio. We've built a strong and a transparent data infrastructure, starting with our Bold Beginning initiative focused on new moms and babies, expanding to our students in elementary, secondary, and career tech schools, making higher education affordable for families, providing opportunities for working Ohioans to expand their skills to meet the demands of our high-tech businesses, and ultimately measuring how our budget priorities impact Ohioans and grow our economy. Thank you so much for recognizing Ohio's efforts to invest in what works. We'll keep working to ensure that the data shows that Ohio is the best place to live, work, innovate, raise a family, and thrive.
Hi, everyone. I'm Minnesota Governor Tim Walz. I'm honored that Results for America has once again chosen Minnesota for a State Standard of Excellence Award. In Minnesota, we're working to ground our public policies in evidence and invest in proven public programs. The One Minnesota budget I signed into law last year makes historic investments in evidence-based practices such as universal school meals, child care assistance, and a child tax credit that could significantly reduce child poverty. By using data and evidence thoughtfully, we achieved results for Minnesotans. Minnesota is committed to building a state that works for everyone. I'm grateful to Results for America for recognizing that commitment. Thank you, and have a great event.
Thanks to these governors for their remarks. Hi, everyone. I'm Patrick Carter, Vice President and State Practice Lead here at Results for America. Our team at RFA is so excited for the work being done by state governments to make meaningful investments and strategies proven to help communities and families thrive. I want to say congratulations to all 46 states featured in the 2023 state standard. We know how much time, effort, and dedication it takes to make evidence-based decision-making a key element of state government. But we can also see how this work has improved outcomes for people living in these states. So let's dive in to learn more about how states are prioritizing evidence and the impact these decisions are having on their communities. I'm really excited to introduce two state leaders who are at the forefront of this work in Minnesota and Ohio. With us today, we have Kimberly Murnix, Director of the Ohio Office of Budget and Management, and Laura Kramer, the Enterprise Director of Results Management at Minnesota Office of Management Budget. Thank you both for joining us today. We really appreciate your time. We invited Director Murnix and Director Kramer to tell us about their efforts to invest in what works through budgeting, direct services, and grants and contracts. Director Murnix, maybe I'll start with you. Ohio is a model for investing in what works through budgeting, specifically because of Ohio's new results-focused budgeting process, which requires agencies requesting funds for new or expanded programs to provide additional information in their budget requests that go to your office. Could you tell us a little bit more about what prompted this evidence requirement and what information is collected?
Afternoon, Patrick. Absolutely. As the state's chief financial officer, I always want to make sure that we are maximizing the impact of our taxpayer dollars. Several of the governors talked about that in their videos as well. Of course, that's what we're all focused on. And so for several years, the state of Ohio has been focused on first building out the data infrastructure to support evidence-based policymaking. And we've been a leader for more than a decade in providing transparent information about our budgets through our Ohio Checkbook Revenue and Spending Dashboard. And at the very beginning of Governor DeWine's term, his first term, he and Lieutenant Governor Husted issued an executive order so that agencies were required to move their data, their agency data, into our advanced data analytics platform. And so as part of our Innovate Ohio program, we established a public data portal, data.ohio.gov, so that we now have more than 100 programs and more than 300 data sets that are updated on our portal and are publicly available. And so all of that work really positioned us well as a state to take that next step to better incorporate our focus on results into our budgeting process. And so when we began planning for what is now our current state biennial budget, we required agencies for all new proposals and all expanded proposals for any program to include in their budget request a logic model that looked at the inputs, laid out what outputs and what outcomes they were focused on. And we incorporated that again into our required planning guidelines. We required that be a part of each agency review with each of our cabinet directors. And my team really focused in as we were reviewing budgets and preparing the governor's executive budget for his final decision making. We made sure that we were really just focusing not just on the what and not just on what we were already doing, but the why and how that was impacting Ohioans. And we all know that the state budget is your primary policy document. That's where you outline what are your priorities. And by ensuring that we were focusing on outcomes in the budgeting process, and by using these robust data tools that we'd really spent a long time investing in and growing and growing our expertise around, we can now track progress to ensure that we're providing results for Ohioans.
That's great. Thank you. Director Kramer, Minnesota is also a model for evidence-based budgeting, as well as 2 other state standard criteria, investing in what works through direct services and through grants and contracts. Minnesota recently invested $1.4 billion in evidence-based programs per year for at least the next 4 years, which is just a huge investment in strategies that meet Minnesota's definition of evidence. What advice would you give to other states who might want to increase resources that are going towards evidence-based programs?
Thank you, Patrick, and I'm happy to be here. When we look at the investments in evidence-based practices in Minnesota, there's a wide variety, from big ticket investments like universal free school meals that Governor Walz mentioned in his video there, to smaller programmatic investments in things like, lead remediation in childcare settings. And given the size and scope of any of these programs, and who makes the decision, we know there's a lot of variation, right? And it's really important to have information and resources available to decision makers at all levels, and to really kind of recognize the different spaces in which those decisions can be made. So we think a lot about who that decision maker is and at what level that program choice is being made. So sometimes it's at the point of legislation and budgeting when the investment in an evidence-based practice can happen. And sometimes it's at the point of an individual county worker or a program grant manager. And so my advice is, I would say, really for others to think about how the information they provide helps inform the questions and challenges that legislators and governors face, as well as those county workers and program directors and grant managers. So in Minnesota, we produce something we call the Minnesota Inventory, which documents current investments that are happening in Minnesota and the evidence of effectiveness for those investments. And it's a tool that's available to any decision maker. But what's also important is providing the assistance and detail at an appropriate level for a specific audience. So Kim is kind of talking here about how you can do that from a budget perspective. And I would say in Minnesota, we've increasingly been working with grant programs to help them think about, how do you issue an RFP that incentivizes evidence-based practices? How do you think about, once that funding decision's been made and funds have been allocated, oftentimes there's a whole host of program choices that need to be made. And being able to keep your eye on both that sort of higher level policy choice, but also the more program-based policy choice can really have some big impacts. That tailoring is certainly a little bit more high touch, but can really lead to shifts toward programming that works. And that's something we've been really focused on.
That's great. Thank you. Director Murnix, one of the primary reasons that we care so much about investing in what works is because the data has shown that this results in improved outcomes for residents. How do you envision results-focused budgeting in Ohio impacting outcomes for your residents there?
So we started this process more than a year ago with the end point in mind, right? We want to continually make sure that we are advancing the state, advancing opportunities for all Ohioans. And so we started by ensuring that everyone on the team had a common language. So we ensured that from our budget analysts to our agency policy chiefs to our chief information officers and our chief financial officers, all of our key program leaders across state government, we made sure that they were all using the same process so that we could establish those logic models, so that we would have a common approach to looking at our inputs and outputs and outcomes. And now that we're a quarter into the biennium, we are working with those priority programs to solidify our results measures. And a great example of that is our Help Me Grow program. It's our evidence-based new parent support program that encourages early prenatal care and well baby care and parental education to promote children's comprehensive health development. And this was a program where we have increased our investments significantly over Governor DeWine's tenure, and especially given his focus on children and families. This has been a key priority. So our output measures for Help Me Grow include the number of families enrolled in home visiting by demographic group, the number of home visits completed, the length of time that a family is enrolled in our home visiting Help Me Grow services. And then we have shorter term outcomes where we're looking at, are we increasing provider capacity so that we have enough home visiting providers? Are we increasing the number of home visiting slots available to families? How are we increasing the number of referrals? And then long term, our outcomes, our ultimate results are looking at decreasing infant mortality by demographic group, increasing scores on kindergarten readiness. And then, of course, that is all linked to our K-12 education goals and so on, so that ultimately we are focused on high school graduation rates, college and career readiness, workforce success. And those are the things that we know ultimately propel opportunity and our overall state's economy. And we're incorporating Spotlight on results into our monthly report. So we issue a monthly financial report from my office, and we're including spotlights on programs like Help Me Grow in that document.
Excellent. Great examples there. Thank you. Director Kramer, can I ask you the same question? How have you seen these evidence-based programs impact outcomes for residents in Minnesota?
Sure. So I love this question, actually, because often we just think about, how do you have that investment shift to an evidence-based practice without looping back to see whether we're really getting the outcomes that we anticipated. And we certainly, have room to grow in Minnesota in that regard. But, I will mention maybe just sort of a few kind of concrete findings that that we've come into more recently. There's, as in many states, I would imagine, we've had a lot of concentrated work in Minnesota to stem the tide of opioid overdose deaths and to really get people into recovery so that they can stay there. Medications for opioid use disorder, like buprenorphine, are an evidence-based treatment modality. And we've spent a lot of time over a number of different agencies and spaces in the state really thinking about how to increase prescribing for that evidence-based treatment. And so when we look at the data, from 2015 to 2022, we can look at the Medicaid claims and see, how prescribing has shifted in that space. And it's increased over 350% in Minnesota. And as more people have access to evidence-based treatment, they're able to live in recovery, regain their health, wellness, and connection to our communities, which is so important. Another example, even in a, sort of a smaller scale, but in partnership with the Federal Office of Evaluation Sciences, we just wrapped up an evaluation that showed a 15% increase in child care centers taking up a stabilization grant after they received a text and a call about that grant opportunity. So a really low cost intervention that means more child care centers have financial support so they can stay open, they can increase wages, and ultimately ensure folks in Minnesota have access to the child care that they need to work and thrive. And I think the other example I'd maybe just note is this year, Minnesota's implemented universal free school meals across the state. And it's just kicked off in September as most of our kids went back to school. And we don't have full data yet, but it's already looking like about a 50% increase in students getting school breakfast and about a 15% increase for school lunch. So these are really, they are impactful numbers to be able to come back around and say those things that have good research to be shown to be working are working. And sometimes we can look at those outputs, and over time we can look at those outcomes through evaluation. And so we're really kind of focused on keeping an eye on that. And I think, being able to scale more when we can, as we see those outcomes come to fruition.
It's great. Thanks for those examples too. I want to thank you both for sharing with all of us today the details that go into using and embedding evidence in decision making, and most importantly, the outcomes that you're seeing in both Ohio and Minnesota. Congratulations on the work that both of you are doing to maximize the impact of taxpayer dollars and use evidence to improve lives. Thank you both for your time today. I want to say thank you to all of our speakers, the governors, Director Murnix and Director Kramer, for elevating terrific examples of how states are advancing this work. We want to encourage all of you to explore more of the state-by-state results in the 2023 State Standard of Excellence. We also want to share with you an opportunity. The RFA team is offering pro bono support to state government leaders who are interested in pursuing initiatives just like the ones that you heard about from Ohio and Minnesota today. So if you want to learn more about how to invest in what works through budgeting, grants, contracts, direct services, send me an email. I can be reached at patrick@resultsforamerica.org. We'll put that in the chat here. And we'd also love to get your feedback on today's event. We're sharing a link to a short survey in the chat right now. Give us your insights so that we can continue to make these events valuable to you. The survey is really short and it'll only take a couple of minutes. Again, I want to say thank you to all of you for attending today. I want to thank National Governors Association for supporting the release of the 2023 State Standard of Excellence. And we hope to connect with you soon again. Thank you all and have a good day.